So we're probably gonna record up to an hour a night, depending on how far we get. I think that's a pretty good amount. These aren't long games, but you do have to put in some work with them. So we'll probably do it in several parts, maybe 15 or 20, depending on how much we actually do. There's a couple little things you can explore besides the main path on the storyline, so you can see some neat details for the town. You don't have to just rush to the next section that they tell you to go through. Now before we get too deep into the game, I want to take you into the menu. Here's a photo of Mary, and here's a letter from her. Now we are only going to examine these once and then never look at them again. I'm going to get the best ending possible in this game, or rather what I think is the best ending and what I feel is most appropriate for the story, and that means that you absolutely cannot look too often at those items. You will come to regret it. The game actually keeps track of those things. How much you look at that photo, how much you look at that letter, how much you protect Maria later on, and those determine the ending that you get. There's a few concrete things you can definitely do to get the ending you prefer, but you really don't want to be looking at those items too much unless you're going for a specific ending. One thing I don't like about this game is that in the first Silent Hill there were tons of references to horror movies, TV shows, books, and there aren't really any references here besides a couple, but you'll see a really good one coming up. It's not quite visible here because of the HD TV, but if you can see really closely on a regular CRT television, you will see that this is actually a poster for The Shining with Jack Nicholson, so that was a pretty throw in. It's not the 20 or 30 references they had in the first game, but it'll do, I suppose. Look at the loading screen also. When you're loading the different areas, it looks like footprints, doesn't it? That'll play an importance later on, so keep that in mind. And it looks like there were a lot of fans of The Shining here, posters everywhere. I always thought there was something odd or maybe frightening on the other side of this abyss, but no, it's basically just a drainage canal. But you do get a lot of vague hints about stuff in this game, so I always thought it might have had more significance, the fact that you can't cross over to that other section. You gotta admire the fact that they went for the slow build in this game instead of just throwing you right into the action like most games would do. You know, that's what Silent Hill 1 did, that's what Silent Hill 3 does, and what Silent Hill 4 would also do. And of course most action or horror games throw you right into the middle of the scenario, so it's actually kind of a bold creative choice to start off with a game that starts off this slowly. You're pretty much building atmosphere until you reach the main town. Okay, we've taken our time long enough. Let's hurry things along. That's another neat little detail too, the signs for the various businesses and buildings and establishments in the town. You know, not a lot of game designers would take the time to put in all those little details. Capcom does it sometimes with Resident Evil games, And then other times they just say the hell with it and just make a basic, boring, empty town or environment. I like the fact that Team Silent thought better and actually decided to include all of these little details in the town. Now, a lot of the early buildings and shots that we saw in previews of the game for this area weren't really used. I think there was a cafe of some sort and a restaurant, but you can see traces of their design in these buildings. Believe it or not, there's actually a small little town in California that has these exact buildings. That's what they based the designs on. I think it's Burbank, South Burbank, West Burbank, I'm not sure. Or is it Modesto, California? One of those towns, but yes, this part of Silent Hill literally is based on that town. Here's a first aid kit. You'll need those definitely in the hard mode. I also find it creepy that there's actually a Toluca Lake in real life. There is an actual real life Toluca Lake. It's not just a place they invented for the game. You can see everything's deserted, so you really are isolated here. More so than in almost any other horror game you can play. There's no people, no working cars, nothing. No one's coming to help you. Normally there'd be more health drinks around here, healing items that you can use, but on hard mode they take away some of those. Even so, the game's still not really that much of a challenge, but it does get harder on the hard difficulty. Yeah, James, you should definitely follow the armless thing you saw off in the distance. It's funny, if you actually try to go the other way, they tell you that he absolutely has to follow it. Yeah, I don't remember which street, but if you try to go in a different direction than that creature, they actually will tell you that you have to follow it. One of the things I always liked about the Silent Hill games compared to Resident Evil or other horror games, even other action games, is that it actually looks like an actual town. There's nothing that bugs me more than a town like in Resident Evil 3 Nemesis that is supposed to be a working, functional city and actually looks more like just a giant puzzle put together to challenge you, like the realistic build of Silent Hill. Nice map too. One of my favorite YouTube players is always commenting that Resident Evil maps are useless, and as you can see in Silent Hill they actually look like actual maps, so they're pretty useful once you get lost. I'm gonna try to work on the occasional little blackouts that happen. As I said, I'm recording with a component cable. It converts the component signal, I guess, to HDMI, and then we can record on the laptop. Technically the HD versions are there, and if it's necessary I will get one of those at a cheap price, but yeah, I just really don't want to have to play the HD versions with like their 100 little glitches that they have. So hopefully it won't be too bad and I can figure out how to record more smoothly using this setup. actually gotta wonder if the creature actually killed someone or if it's just a setup to get James in there to lure him in. Before we go after him, let's stop in here. You're gonna need these health drinks. Here's another save point, although we don't really use this one. So I heard something interesting recently in that apparently for the new Halloween movie, Jamie Lee Curtis is actually returning to the role of Jamie Strode. I don't know, how do you guys feel about that? You think it's a good idea? Bad idea? I'm confused because as far as I'd heard, her character was killed in the last Halloween movie. So I'm wondering what they're actually gonna do. I'm all for ignoring that horrible abomination of a movie, but it doesn't make sense how she would return. I guess she might be a ghost? It would be pretty interesting if for once it was Michael Myers who was actually being haunted by something supernatural. She could be acting as his consciousness, I guess, tormenting him from beyond the grave. Although I guess she also might have just faked her own death. It would have been pretty smart of her to fall off that building and pretend to be dead so that he would finally leave her alone. From what I've heard, after he kills her, he basically goes into an auto self shutdown. He basically just shuts down until someone disturbs him, so who knows what they'll do with it.
Is it dead? What the hell is it? It's not human.
Ah, the old board with a nail in it. The wooden plank with a nail. Believe it or not, you'll actually be using this weapon a lot until you get something better. This actually freaked out a lot of people at the first E3 when they saw it. Well, not the first E3, but when they first saw it at the E3 Expo. Silent Hill has kind of become synonymous with strange, human-like, warped monsters now, but it actually wasn't so. They were just regular monsters in the first game, and starting with this game, they actually adapted that theme. So you've seen a lot of weird monsters, but these were some of the first. Wonder if James has anything to say about it. No.
Oh yeah. This thing broken? What the? I'd better take it anyway. I might need it.
So if you read the subtitles, someone's obviously trying to contact James through the radio. We don't know who they are yet or what they are, but they are trying to contact him, so keep that in mind. That'll be important later on. Like the blood-filled steps. That's something you definitely don't see in other horror games. In fact, I think this is the main horror game which I first saw that little detail. I'm sure Resident Evil and other games have adapted it since then, but this is the first time I saw it. And now that you've pretty much activated that one monster, it's going to be filled with monsters, so get ready to see a lot of them. And they are fast as hell in this difficulty. So as I was saying, you think it's a good idea? Jamie Lee Curtis returning to Halloween? Think it's a bad idea? See, like, I'm inclined to think it's a bad idea, but at the same time, it is John Carpenter and Jamie Lee Curtis, so presumably they know what they're doing. Oh. Bastard sneaked up on me. Yeah, believe it or not, those guys can actually be pretty stealthy. There's a nice little detail. Let's stop to read this. Something is written on it. Too bad I can't read it because the surface has been rubbed away. Now technically I'm gonna cheat a bit and read some of what I remember from a file released by the development team. So this is supposed to read Remains of Blood Swamp. The acres of land surrounding this monument was originally swamp but later filled in. It's nicknamed Blood Swamp because so basically you can't read it, but it's talking about a lot of people who died there and their blood basically flooded the swamp in the area, hence the name for the Blood Swamp. Now before we head to the apartment, which is where you're really supposed to go, we're actually gonna go to a couple other stops first. First we're gonna go to Neely's bar. There's something important to see there. And we're also gonna see if we can pick up some supplies in the meantime. There's a lot of little health drinks and laying around. Yeah, just ignore these guys for now. You don't want to take too many of those sprays because they are acid and they will harm you. But as long as you just keep on moving, they're not that much of a threat. I tend to get lost in this game, so I have horrible directions. So I'll definitely be referring to the map quite frequently. Hopefully it doesn't annoy you, but it's just my sense of direction is bad. Hey, we're almost there. Bar Neely's. So here you can actually get the enhanced map for the game, which tells you where to go. That's your next destination, that alleyway, and then the apartment building. There was a hole here, it's gone now. There have actually been a lot of jokes about this statement. You'll see why once you meet a certain other character later on in the game. But I find that as a basic statement it actually works. It's mysterious, you don't know what they're referring to, but you're gonna get a good idea of it later on in the game. And believe it or not, you also get a good idea of it later on in Silent Hill 4, so it's a nice message, it works. but it's way too easy to make some jokes about that. You'll see why later on. Okay, so now that we got the map, we're gonna head over here first. A little RV that's actually stationed near a closed door. Yeah, those guys are annoying with that spray. That's pretty much their only attack. They can't do anything else, but god damn, they are annoying. The good thing about this game is that if you're playing with headphones, it actually is pretty easy to determine where the monsters are coming from. You just have to listen for their steps. This is a nice little touch. In the first Silent Hill there was a school bus that had some good supplies you could find, and here you have an RV. Technically you're supposed to go here first and not at the bar, but like I said, I've played this game dozens of times. There's a memo lying on the sofa. Neely's. Now this little can here is actually called the Hyper Spray, and this is a bonus item that you find after you've completed the game a number of times. Depending on what your ranking is with the stars that you accumulate, you can get up to 10 stars. The Hyper Spray will be stronger and it will stop enemies dead in their tracks, and I think it can even kill them on the 10-star level. So if you've mastered this game completely and gotten the 10-star ranking, this is basically a super weapon that'll stop any enemy. We're gonna pick this up, but we're not gonna use it because it's basically cheating. You know, there's no challenge if you can freeze the enemy in his steps. Suspicious spray can, effect unknown. Of course, James, why would you pick up a suspicious spray can from an RV from someone you don't know in a town that's haunted by monsters? But whatever. And there's another save point. I think we're gonna go as far as getting the key to the apartment building, and then we'll save there. We don't want to save at the streets because it's only like 10 minutes until you get the key. But that's a nice good stopping point. You'll be past the first part of the game. This door is locked. You can only open it under certain circumstances. So let's head on over to that alleyway and get the key. Again, these guys are annoying as hell, but you don't have to actually fight them. They only really become a problem in the corridors or the apartment building, as you'll see. They're crawling everywhere around that place. Yeah, I cannot remember directions to save my life. I absolutely have to print them out wherever I go somewhere. If you'll notice, the traffic lights are all stopped. I always thought that was some kind of ghost apparently on the traffic light, some type of ghost signal, but no, it's just stopped in mid, like time has completely come to a standstill. There's actually a oh, here come these guys. Believe it or not, the roaches are some of your worst enemies in this game. They used to be pretty harmless in Silent Hill 1 unless you really amped up the difficulty, but then trust me, they're vicious here, and too many bites so they will take your health down. So you want to avoid these guys as much as you can, at least until you have the gun. Yeah, James, let's just get this key and get the hell out of here. I wonder what happened to that guy. It wasn't good. Yeah, the straitjacket monsters are not usually much of a threat, but when they turn into that form, crawling along the ground, that's when you really want to avoid them. believe me, they will take a good chunk of your health out of that form. Now before we go to the apartment building, there's one little thing more that I want to show you. If I could get these guys off my back for once. Okay. We're only gonna have a short time to read this. Quick. There's crab guys still crawling around on the floor. See, James isn't the only victim here. There are other people in this town. I'm going to write everything I've learned so far. Maybe that will help you out somehow. You're reading this, it probably means I'm already dead. Of course you are. So there's a strong hint that'll help you out in the apartment and the hospital. They need light. They're attracted to light and sound, so sometimes you can turn off your flashlight and they won't find you. Run away. Yeah, this guy actually took the time to write out that whole thing on a piece of paper. Either that, or else the town is messing with you and they appear automatically by themselves. You never can tell in this game. So we're just gonna grab one more first aid kit and then get the hell out of here. So we've got the key for the apartment building. Woodside apartment. And I think we've gotten as much health drinks and supplies we're going to get with all these monsters crawling around, so let's just get out of here. There's actually a neat little door that you can examine here. The door that wakes in darkness, opening into nightmares. Yeah, it's locked. But you don't want to get bitten by those roaches. It's funny how everything goes quiet once he goes into the apartment building, like it all vanished out of nowhere. Or vanished into nowhere. Garbage, no use for that. Not yet, anyway. There are two doors here, the other one is locked. It's locked. I gotta say, if it weren't for all the monsters and all the fog and all the weird stuff going on, Silent Hill actually looks like a pretty good place to live. Or at least it used to be. So this is your first major portion of the game. This is where you're going to spend a lot of your time in the beginning hour or so of the game. We got another health drink, and pretty soon we're going to pick up a flashlight, which is good because it is really dark in here. So guys, I think this is a good stopping point for now. We've made some progress. We got to the apartment building with minimal damage. You can see we still got 6 health drinks and 3 first aid kits. Got 10 bullets, no handgun, but we're gonna get one. And we picked up a couple of items to help us out along the way. This game is actually about 6 hours long on hard difficulty, so it's not a really hard game or a really long game, but it is a pretty good experience. And I think with this game more than the other Silent Hills, it really is all about the experience, the soundtrack, the voice acting, the story, the atmosphere. It's not really an action type of game. There you see James evaluating his surroundings. But anyway, I think Silent Hill 3 is actually more of an action game that you just play for fun, even though it has great atmosphere and terrific voice acting. But with this game, Silent Hill 2, you really are playing it for the experience. And as I said, this is definitely one of the games that people bring out and use as examples of how games can be art. That's always a controversial topic, but I definitely believe that this game, and hopefully you'll see why in the playthrough as we go on. Thank you again for listening. As always, I'm your host, Pyramid Head 316, and this has been a playthrough for Silent Hill 2. We will continue either tomorrow in the evening or else the next day after that in the evening. That's pretty much the only time I have to record when there's no background noise that can be picked up by the mic. Unfortunately, I don't have a really expensive microphone. I just have a semi-decent one, and there is some background noise that may filter in, but pretty much the evening hours are the safest time to record, so that's when I hope to do most of my recording, both for Silent Hill and for other games like Metal Gear, Soul Reaper, which is one I really want to do, and even some Persona games. So, thank you for watching. See you again sometime. Hopefully you'll tune into the next part, and I hope you enjoy this playthrough. At least the very first part. It's gonna get a lot more interesting in the game from here on in. Trust me, folks. Alright, see you later. Have a good night.